All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is my first time presenting during Tech Week, so I'm not quite sure how this goes, but I will do the best to be what is expected here. As people join in, I'll just give you a little bit of a background of me and what we hope to cover today. So my name is Rick, and I work for ITS. I am the product manager for Office 365. And I've been at the university for I guess 16 years now. But I recently, well, about 3 or 4 years ago, I moved over to ITS. But I've been at the library. I've been at the Dean of Students office. I've worked with students and faculty across the board. So to be able to talk about technology that helps us engage with students and work with students is a pleasure of mine, because I think there's some really great things happening out there. And hopefully what we talk about today with Teams, it could be one of the tools that is used when engaging with students. My co-presenter today will be Rich Ross. And Rich and I have, in the past year or so, especially because of COVID, work together to come up with some really good ways. I think he's got some great ideas, and trying to introduce this idea of using Teams in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And my hope is that what you see is that Teams can be used beyond just instruction, but staying in touch with your students between classes, and staying engaged, is just having it as another tool to be able to stay engaged with students and even other faculty. So we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and dive right in, and I'll present about Teams, some basic things about Teams, some things you need to know using Teams at UVA, some tips for perhaps faculty or staff who are engaging with students, and then I'll hand it over to Rich, and he can talk about what he's been doing. So without further ado, let me share my screen. Okay, is everybody seeing the Teams logo? Okay, great. So get rid of this. Okay, so Teams at the University of Virginia. So what is Teams, and what is it good for? Well, it's very good at creating a digital online space where you can meet with colleagues, you can meet with students, you can hold meetings, share files, have conversations, and be able to keep track of all of that, stay in touch with one another, stay in touch with the things that you do in order to get the job done. And you do that through this interface, which this is a very scary looking interface because of all these boxes. But my hope is that we could break this down and you have a little clearer understanding of how to navigate it. So there are 4 key areas in Teams, and we'll start at the top. So the top bar, which is a search or type command, you see that written there. So in that top bar of the window, you have on the left, you have this little icon called Start a New Chat. And this is great if you want to start a one-to-one conversation with somebody, or you want to have a conversation with just a couple of people. So you would click that, and you would start typing in the person's name and pick it from the people picker that pops up. The next little window you have is a search or type command. Now this is, they call it the command box, but I think you're probably going to use it more for search. Because Teams is a linear conversation that goes on, and that includes when you interject files or meeting recordings into those conversations, that all stays persistent. It doesn't go away when you close the application. It's always there. So it's really great if you're trying to find that file, find that person, or find that conversation, or to see if somebody even had a conversation in the team, which is helpful in a project type scenario or a new employee type situation, or in a student wants to see if maybe it was discussed in class that they missed. You can type that in, type the topic in there, and it'll pop up. And I'll show you a little bit more how you filter that out to people, files, and messages. So that's the top window. So let's go over to the left of the screen, and you have what's called the tool rail. So what happens in the tool rail, these are applications in Teams that deal with you. This is you. So you have the little bell icon, which is the activity of what's happening in Teams, whether it's somebody messaged you, somebody shared a file, maybe there was a post to a team. Activity is going to show that. Chat, these are people that are having, these are chats that you're having with people. So it could be one-on-one or 1 to 2 or 3. I have some chat groups where there's like 4 or 5 people that I have talked to on a regular basis. When you click on chat, you'll see your most recent chats. The next one down is the Teams icon. When you click on that, it'll expose the list of teams that you belong to, and then you can navigate through there. When you click on the calendar icon, it'll show you your Outlook calendar. So in Teams, so it's anything that's on your Outlook calendar will show up there, as well as your team meetings. And then you have files. Now that's files that are pertaining to you. So that exposes your insight into what you have stored on OneDrive. So it could be files that you've created, or it can also be files that people have shared to you. So again, the idea is that you're in Teams and you could do a lot of what you're trying to do without having to leave Teams. So we'll go to the next section over to the right, the white section that you see here. So depending on what you click on the tool rail, you're going to have, this window is going to change. So you're going to have, if you choose activity, it's going to be the list of the most recent activity. If you choose chat, this is where your most recent chats are going to show up. If you hit Teams, this is where the teams that you belong to are going to show up. So when you click on Teams, for example, you have your list of teams. This is also where you're going to be opening up the channel that nests inside each team. So every team has a channel. We'll talk a little bit about the roles of channel in coming slides. But this is where you would navigate through your teams and through your channels. And this is where you would get into menus to manage your channels. But again, you're not leaving. You're all going to stay inside Teams. Moving further over to the right is this large section of Teams, and this is where all the business takes place. So if you clicked on your chat, this is where your chat's going to take place. This is where you're going to be doing your typing. This is where you're going to look through. You're going to see your chat history. This is where, if you clicked on files, it'll open up all your files. If you clicked on Planner, you're going to, which is a sort of a project managing task management tool in Teams, it's going to show up in this window. So this is the main window in Teams. This is where you're going to do all of your work in Teams. I know that was really quick, but just a real quick overview of what the interface looks like. But now we'll dive down a little bit more into each one of them. The most important thing to grasp is how a team is constructed and what is a team. So a team is a collection of people. That seems pretty obvious. But and the conversations those people have, the files that those people are going to work on, and the tools that you might use to get the work done in Teams. But it's all in one place. A channel inside a team, every team gets a general channel. This is your hallway conversation, water cooler conversation. You can use it for whatever you want, but everybody gets this. So you have to start somewhere as a place to do your work. And that's in the general channel. But then members and owners can create new channels. And you can use these channels and divide them up into either department, if that makes sense, or projects, or topics. It really is up to you and how you want to set up your hierarchy. If it's a class team, you might want to use it for, I think some are using it to break up weeks. Others are using it to break up topics or discussions, whatever it might be. Some will also have an office hours channel, or there's different ways to approach it. The great thing is it is flexible, and it is whatever hierarchy works for you in your area. Let me back up. You can create when you create a channel, you have the ability to make a private channel as well as a public channel. So a regular public channel, anybody in the team has access to that channel. When you create a private channel, this is an invitation only. So out of the list of team members, you can choose who has access to what private channel. Again, this is good if you maybe have a team for a department and the leadership team wants to have a separate place to have conversations that maybe the general team doesn't want to have. If you maybe it's a project team that you're trying to, and you're working with a third-party contractor and you want to have some conversations with just the internal team, you might want to create a private channel. If you're in a student situation, maybe you're working with a student. One example, faculty member was working with a student on their thesis paper. And so you have a channel to have conversations with the student, but maybe you have a private channel to have conversations with another faculty member. And the student isn't privy to, but yet you want to keep it all in under that topic of that team. So private channels are very handy if you want to try to create some delineation between who can see what. It's another access management tool. Okay, so big thing that people do in teams is have a conversation. So you can have a conversation with the whole team. And so when you pick a team and you pick a channel, and then you write down in the message box, and then you click send, which is the little arrow button. So if you're familiar, if you've done, I think we've all done messaging, whether it's through Facebook, Twitter, or Slack or anything like that, works very similar in the same way. You can have, but if you want to have a chat with just an individual, then you just have a chat with an individual. You don't have to create a team in order to have a chat and send a message back and forth, or even have a meeting. So reply. So conversations are linear. They're linear threads. And so you have the person posts a message, and then there's the reply button that shows up, and so that you're replying to that post. Again, very familiar if you're using Twitter or Facebook and or even Instagram, right? So you're replying to the comment or to the post that the person has put on. It's separate from starting a new conversation. This is, again, handy for the search. You have to think about down the road as well. And that because these conversations are nested, you have a topic and then you have replies. This helps down the road when somebody is searching. You can actually search and find. It makes it easier to find later on down the road using this structure. At mentions are also really important and very handy. I use it a lot. When your at mentions get the attention of the person, team, or channel. So if you have a question for a specific person in a team or a specific person in a chat, you use the at symbol and start typing their name. A pop-up window will appear, and you just pick which one matches. You can do an at message to the entire team. So maybe you're posing a question to the entire team. At symbol, start typing the name of the team and choose it from the list that pops up. Perhaps you just want to address people to a certain channel. So then you can at symbol, name of the channel, choose it from the list. Why this is powerful is that it sends a pop-up message on the screen of what that is for that person or that team or that channel. Plus, if the person doesn't respond, Microsoft knows that and will send an email saying your colleagues are trying to reach you on Teams. And so again, it's a good way to make sure that the person that needs to see that information sees that information. And we'll talk about how that works when you're working with students and also working with people. Setting expectations of what that means will be important as you go. And then, of course, a picture means 1,000 words. So you can have a sticker, emojis, memes. This is common in our day to add this stuff, and it sort of lightens the mood and maybe gets, maybe even clears up some confusion. So files, that's the other really important thing that we do in Teams, right, is use it to share files. So you can attach files to a chat, to a conversation by using the little paperclip icon. And and then you can choose whether you want to upload from your computer or pull it from OneDrive, and then or browse from another team or another channel. When you upload from your computer, you're uploading a copy of it, and it'll actually put that copy not only in the conversation thread, but it also puts it in the Files tab for that channel, which is helpful. If you're sharing from OneDrive, what it'll automatically do is put a link to that file in OneDrive. So you're not actually sharing the file, you're just sharing a link to that file. You're giving permission to those people to see that, only that file on your OneDrive. And the same thing with the teams and channels. So again, this is very helpful in that it all stays in the environment, and it's a safe and secure way of sharing files. So when you're working with files, it looks like any other file browser in Teams. When you click on the Files tab, you'll see all your files listed there. You can create folders so that you can nest based on topic or however you want to organize. When you click on, you'll see in the files, you have the option to, there's 3 little dots for more options, or most people are used to right-clicking on the file, and you'll get a list longer than this now. Microsoft continues to add more tools to this list of what you can do with that file. This is where you can set your access rights. This is where you can set it to maybe read only. Again, that's important. We'll talk about this in tips for faculty down the road in later slides. It's how you can set something to read only. This is how you can get to version history. If something has been changed, you can pull a lot of information. You can get a sharing link. But you get a lot of tools in the more options. What's also really cool is you do have an option to make it a tab. So perhaps it's the project outline, maybe it's the course outline, maybe it's the agenda for a meeting or whatever. You can make anything in the file list, you can make it a tab at the top. So it's almost like making it a sticky. It's quick, it's easy to refer to. If you make it a tab, people don't have to search through the list of files. So this is very helpful. The other thing we do in Teams, obviously, is have a meeting. So there are a couple of different meeting types. There's a Meet Now. And so what's important to know is that Meet Now sends a message to everybody in that channel that, hey, we're having a meeting. Great if you're having a project or you need to have a quick conversation with a group of people in the team, and you need to talk about something, you can click that button, put a name, start inviting people, or of course everybody in the channel is going to get notified so they can join as well. This is slightly different than having a meeting in Teams. So when you go to Outlook and create a Teams meeting, you can invite anybody you want, whether they're in a team or not. So in this context, Meet Now refers to the people in a team or a channel going to a meeting, not having a meeting, hosting a meeting in Teams like you would a meeting in Zoom. So this is slightly different than that. This all takes place in team, and the access is limited to the people in the team or in the channel. Making video and audio calls. So if you want to have a call with a specific person, maybe it's too hard to type everything through chat that you need to talk to the person about, and you just need to make the audio call. And maybe you started a conversation with somebody and you say, well, let me just give you a call. In the upper right-hand corner of the chat window, you'll see the ability to make a video call or an audio call. And all it means is a video call will automatically have the video on. An audio call for us here at UVA is just an audio call through Teams. We do not have the PTSN turned on, so we're not using it's not like a Polycom type of call. So how do you stay on top of all this stuff? Well, it's easy when we're all in the office, but working from home, there's a lot of times I'll hear a ding, but I'm not quite sure what it was. Is it a ding that somebody's trying to get a hold of me in Teams? Is it a ding because somebody added a file in Teams? Is it an update? And what's going on? So often I'll go to activity and click on the activity button, and that will then show me a list of all the recent activity that's happened. So I can quickly see there, oh, so-and-so updated the most recent document of this project into the team, or, oh, somebody's trying to chat with me. So the activity will become, the more you do in it, the activity feed's going to be important to use. So we talked about these tabs, and so the tabs are above it's in that main window that we talked about, and they are literally these tabs like you would have in a browser. And this is where you can add applications. I think for me, the most useful one is website. It adds functionality to Teams that maybe you can't get any other way. So if you need to refer to a resource, and you need the team needs to refer to this resource, or perhaps maybe you're working in Smartsheet, and right now there's no real good integration into Teams and Smartsheet. You can add the website of the Smartsheet in as a tab, and it opens. Teams then becomes a browser and opens that web page inside Teams. But let's say you want to embed a stream video, you want to create a wiki for the team, you want to embed the planner, you're using Planner, maybe it's a PDF, maybe you have your agenda or your outline or the course description, whatever, in a PDF form. Again, you can just add that as a tab at the top. So again, tabs can be very helpful in getting information available to people more quickly. They don't have to search through a list of things. It also helps add some functionality. So how do we search for stuff? It's a lot of stuff, right? We now have conversations, we have files, we've got tabs, we've got people. How do I find if I don't know where to look? So when I first started at ITS, Office 365 was still I was up and running for a couple of years, and the project team had a lot of conversations about things that they were going to implement in Teams or not implement in Teams. So if I had a question, I could email, I could send a chat, but I quickly discovered, gosh, if I just go to the project team and then I type in what I'm looking for in the search up at the top, I expose conversations and files and meeting notes about that topic. So the search functionality is really important, and it really is useful. So you can filter. So if you want to just see messages that pertain to the search query that you have, you can click on messages and you'll see the chat conversations that people might have had around that topic. But maybe you're looking for a person. So you can type the name of the person and click on people, and it'll expose the person you're looking for. And then, of course, files. So let's say it's you're trying to find that project file, or you're trying to find that instruction, or that piece of reference information you're trying to find. Again, that's where the files comes in. So the search functionality is really useful in Teams and helps navigate, and it cuts down the amount of time that you need. So thinking about having the search functionality, that may influence how you set up your team, how you instruct your team members to use Teams, as far as like, hey, we're going to put all our files in here. Hey, I want to have all the conversations about this in Teams, because then it's going to help people down the road as they search. So personal apps, there are new things getting added in there all the time. So you can add things to pin to the left side. So you can add I'll talk about insights in a little bit. So if you're a faculty member, you want to have insights into how students are engaged in your various teams, you can add the Insight app to the side. Maybe you've created a bot, which I don't think anybody has, but you want to pin that to the side. Maybe you want to pin OneNote, you want to pin a wiki. But these are, remember that ToolRail it exposes information that pertains to you specifically and what you have access to. Okay, so I talked about insights, and Rich had suggested I talk about this, and I think it's helpful. So we have this as part of our tenant, we have this ability to look into how people are engaged digitally in teams and what they're doing in teams and what kind of activity. For educators, this can be important because it provides some real-time analytics around student participation and activity. And looking at these trends could help in either planning down the road from semester to semester, or maybe identifying some students that you need to contact, or and actually you can use this also outside of a classroom environment as well. Maybe you have you're a manager and you have a team for your department, and you're not seeing, there's a couple of your employees that aren't being engaged. Maybe you need to have a conversation with them, especially in this time where people are working remotely. This might be important. An example of what we're talking about is called digital activity. And this digital activity report tells you how active your students are in a certain time frame. So you can tell whether they've opened a file, visited a channel, attended a meeting, how long they attended the meeting, and a lot more. And so there's a lot of data to dive into, and there's some use that you can have with this. I think it's relatively new, this kind of insights, and I know it gets kind of scary. Some people get a little scared about what people know about what they're doing, but all this stuff there's not an actual person looking at it. It's based on AI data analysis, and all FERPA regulations are adhered to as well. So there's nobody actually looking at it. Nothing is being shared outside of UVA. This is all anonymized and just looking at activity that's happening inside the team. So I'm sure I'll be sharing this out. The CTE will be sharing out the presentations that we have today. So I included this link into the Educator's Guide to Insights. It gives you a lot more in-depth information that I can go through right now, and how to use it. If you want to contact me offline to get more information on this, I'll be happy to share it out. Some limits to talk about if you're using Teams. So you can have 25,000 people in a team. You can have 200 channels in a team. You can have 30 private channels in a team. You can have 250 people in a private channel. And then something I didn't talk about because it's fairly new is breakout rooms. So while breakout rooms has been in Teams now for several months, there in September, we're going to have an update to breakout rooms in Teams where organizers the owner of the meeting not only can create the breakout room, but they can assign a member of the team to be a manager for the breakout room. So I'm sure that's going to be helpful. But you can have 300 people in a breakout room, and then a number of people in a Teams live event, which is different than a meeting. So Teams live events are the team equivalent to a webinar in Zoom. So you can have 10,000 people. You have some different roles in managing that. You've got the organizer, and then you've got I don't want to say it's an engineer, but it's a person that's responsible for actually running the program. And then you have presenters. So there's some roles in there. Of course, with flexibility and controls comes with a little bit more complexity. So if you're interested in Teams live events, reach me offline and I can send you more information and walk you through setting that up. But what's great about that is that you can send out invitations. They don't have to be members of a team. They don't even have to even have Office 365 to attend a Teams live event. Something I don't have on here, and that is the number of people that can be in a Teams meeting. So that's what Rich and I were talking about when everybody was joining in. So you can have 1,000 people in a meeting, in a Teams meeting. If more than 1,000 people join, then those people turn into what's called view only mode. So they can only see the meeting, but they can't participate in the meeting. So this is sort of Microsoft's way of trying to say, okay, we have to put a limit, but we understand it might be over the limit. Instead of cutting those people off, we're just going to limit what they can do in a meeting. These things are kind of fluid as remote work blooms, and so stay tuned. Tips for faculty. So we'll go through this rather quickly. I really want to try to give Rich as much time as we can, and we all want to also have some questions afterwards. So inviting students to a meeting in a channel. So this is important. So create the meeting using the calendar in Teams. Don't invite them individually. Select the team that you're going to have the meeting in, and then select the channel that you're going to have the meeting. So in this case, for class. All the students who are members of the team channel will get the notification. So that's why we want to try to start this from inside Teams. And then having what's the value of having the meeting in Teams? Well, recordings, notes, files, chats that all relate to the meeting all happen in the channel and stay there, and it makes it easier to find later down the road. We're talking about setting things up to make search more powerful. That's a way to do it. How students participate in a meeting. So when you set up a Teams meeting, hit send, the invitation goes out. Once it appears on the calendar, you want to reopen it, and then you want to go into meeting options and change to who can present and make it so it's only you. This ensures that when students log in, they're limited in controlling the meeting, and they're just there as a meeting participant. You can change that in the meeting. You can go ahead and allow people to present, but this at least gets you on the right track when the meeting starts. Talked about expectations before. So we have all these tools. The sort of the best scenario is to outline, again, you could pin this as a tab, outline what you expect from the members of the team or the members of the class. So for example, when an @ mention goes out, is the expectation that there is a requirement to take action immediately, or is it just a notification that you want somebody to be aware? So set those parameters up right away. This sort of helps what the team members are supposed to do when things happen. Now record your lesson. This is really just going to be up to you to you guys, but sort of the recommendation of recording the lesson in Teams is that it's a permanent record. It's part of that linear conversation. It's easier for students to find later on, especially if they've missed a class for illness or other reasons. The other thing is that it used to be that when you recorded a meeting in Teams, it went to Microsoft Stream. Microsoft has changed that over the summer. It now goes to your OneDrive of the person who hit record. And in your case, because you created the meeting, it would go to your OneDrive, and it's in a folder called Teams Recordings. The reason this is good is because being that it's in OneDrive, you have more options to expose analytics about who saw it, when they saw it, how many people saw it. So it's a little bit more than what we got in Stream. The other thing is it makes it, Zoom has, our records management office has put a limit of 180 days on Zoom recordings. That's going to be also with the Teams recordings in OneDrive. So we're going to be consistent there. It's 180 days that it's going to stick around before it expires. Okay, read-only folder for distributed material. Remember I talked about you can have those more options, you can change access. So if you're going to share stuff in Teams that you don't want people to change, don't forget to turn it read-only. You can either do that per document, or you can actually create a folder that this stuff is going to live in that is only in read-only mode. Okay, one last thing. We have multiple tenants here at UVA. So we have the ITS hosted central academic tenant, and that's where most people are, but Darden and Law have their own tenant. McIntyre has their own tenant, but that's only going to be temporary because they are moving. By next year at this time, they will be in the central academic tenant. So if you're working with people in McIntyre, it'll be a lot easier in the future. But how do you work in this environment? So let's say you're working with somebody in Darden in Teams. How do you invite them? So the recommended method is to request through the ITS help desk an A1 Teams only license. And you can use that terminology and they'll know exactly what you're talking about. And you send the Darden person the invitation to the team using their computing ID at virginia.edu. They will then have to use their eServices password to log into Office 365. But the good thing is they will become a full member. And that's important because guests are limited in what they can do in Teams. What's not recommended is sending an invitation to them through their computing ID at darden.virginia.edu or law.virginia.edu. Because what will happen is they'll try to log in and they'll join as a guest, not as a member. They might not use the same email address that you've sent the invitation to, because the address that you use in the people picker might not be the one that they're using. So their Darden email may not show up when you send an invitation. And they will have a separate MFA challenge. So they won't go to Duo. They'll go to a Microsoft challenge, which can get confusing. It's not going to be confusing if you're actually inviting a guest, but it would be confusing to a UVA user that they're not getting a Duo MFA, they're getting a Microsoft MFA. So we want to do the recommended A1 Teams only. This is going to come in not if you're working with students, but if you're working with another faculty member or a staff member in another school. All students have access to Teams and the Office 365 tools. They don't have email and calendar right now, but they do have all the other tools. This is only if you're going to be working with colleagues in those other areas. Okay. Last but not least, I encourage you to join the Office 365 community team. It's a public team. You join that, you're going to get updates on Office 365, training opportunities, tips and tricks. I post a lot of stuff in there, or try to, and we're getting into a period where there's going to be a lot of updates coming to Office 365 and Teams. And so this is a good way to stay in touch. For more in-depth tutorials, again, you could go to, there's the Microsoft University. It's about education for educators. And again, hopefully we'll be able to just use this link. If not, I can send it out to you, or I think I even have it listed in the team site. Of course, you can also Google Microsoft 365 training, and that center is really great, and it gets more in-depth to not only Teams, but all the other Office 365 stuff. And then last but not least, if you need help, you can contact the UVA ITS help desk, and they will get you the answer. And if they don't know it, they'll send you to somebody who does. It's usually me. So that's it. And without further ado, I will stop sharing and hand this over to Rich. Hope I gave you enough time. We can have questions at the end, or you can contact me outside. So,
yeah.
All right.
So just to double check, is everybody able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, huge thanks to Rick, not only for the presentation, but also his help and frankly, patience with me as I first got started in Teams. I ran into many questions as I was first getting started, and he's been super helpful every step of the way. So I've kind of maybe ambitiously titled my part of the presentation is Microsoft Teams, an alternative to everything. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's see. When I think about classes that I or my colleagues teach, I think about all of these tools that we use, right? We have some sort of LMS where that's kind of like the hub for content for our courses. For some of us, that's Canvas. For some of us, it's Colab. Maybe you have a different LMS. And I don't know if Blackboard's around at UVA, but colleagues at other schools use different LMSs. And so we have this like kind of hub of the place where we do the thing that interacts with where we submit grades. We have forums and discussion boards, places that we encourage and promote discussion. Now, some of us might use the discussion board within our LMS. Some of us might use a third-party tool like Piazza. We use systems for students working on documents in a collaborative way, whether that's Box or Dropbox, maybe Google Docs. Certainly there's other ways as well where you can work on a document together. There's online meetings. Zoom probably is one of the most popular. That's how we're meeting now. Also Google Meet. Maybe some of you are even using a different tool for online meetings. And then there's communication, personal correspondence, right? Maybe you email with students, maybe more than you'd like some days. But certainly there's lots of communication that happens. Maybe you use Slack to communicate with some of your students. I know that some courses in the computer science department will at least sometimes use a very similar service called Discord. And so there's all these different tools. And I just kind of have a question for all of us to think about a little bit. Are you happy with this? Do you think that you're in like you've reached Zen? Like I have the perfect set of tools, and I wouldn't design it any other way, even if I could. I'm not. And I have found that Teams is a really, really nice solution that you could use for any of these things. You could use it for all of these things, but you don't have to, like, there's nothing about using Teams that says you have to do everything only in Teams. It's a really, really nice and flexible platform. So I thought that what I could do with my time today here is focus on how you can use Teams for each of these roles. And then as you think about your experiences with students, you can think about, do I want to use Teams for one of these things, 3 of these things, all of these things? Are you going to be the person who brings a completely new set of functionality to Teams by thinking of a way to do things that other people haven't thought of yet? Maybe so. So lots of stuff is already built into Teams, but I'm going to talk about how you can kind of use each of these, kind of fill each of these roles by using Teams. So the first one is, and Rick already mentioned this a little bit, but just for some reference, this is what the window looks like in Teams. So you can see on that far left, I don't know, ribbon or toolbar, you have activity, chat, Teams. If you are using Teams that are designated as a class type of team, then you'll also see assignments. I don't give my assignments within Teams. You can give assignments and give grades within Teams. I don't personally do that, and I don't have a ton of super in-depth information to share with you on that today, but you can do it. Also your calendar and calls. But once you are within a team, you can see that I am within a team that has this little logo that looks like the pi symbol. My team here is called Example Course. And you can see that I have various different channels or sections within my team. Channels are kind of like, when you go to a team, that might be like saying, here is a specific course. And channels would be different topics or purposes within that course. And Rick's already talked about channels a fair amount, but I just want to kind of point out that there are these kind of axes of navigation. So if I'm in this general channel, you can see on the left side, it says underneath channels, general is highlighted. And then the second kind of axis of navigation is along the top of the window where it says general, and right now kind of posts has a little purple underline, but there's also a tab for files. So you kind of pick your topic by choosing a channel, and then you pick what you would like to do within that topic by selecting the tab that you want. Now, how fancy or elaborate do you want to get with your channels or your tabs? 100% up to you. They start out very basic, but you can make them as big or as elaborate as you wish to do. So just to kind of, again, reinforce the idea of this is what a Teams window looks like. So if we think about using Teams in some ways similar to an LMS as a hub for content, right? You have documents, videos, all sorts of files that you want to share with your team. I've given here a screenshot that you can see on the right-hand side of the screen that shows part of the way that I set up one of my teams over the summer term. And you can see that there's a general channel, and then I have a class admin channel that's for me to talk to the TAs of the class, the course staff, and only I and the TAs have access. So we can talk about, anything that pops up, are we accepting late submissions on a particular assignment or not? And then students can see all the rest of these channels, the ones without a lock, everyone has access to. And so they can find all of their homework assignments in one spot. And it's obvious what that spot is. It's the channel called Homework Assignments and Data. So they can go to the Files tab and access any homework assignment, any data set that's associated. Since I teach in statistics, we work with data sets in many of our assignments. There's a tab, or there's a channel that has all the lecture videos. So if somebody ever wants to go back and watch something, the channel tells them exactly where to look. If they have questions about the project, or they want to look at reference materials for the class and so forth, those channels exist. Now, I choose to also create channels for the different units of my course. So I have units 0 through 7 shown here. You can do it for modules of your course, weeks of your course. However you want to set it up, you have control to create your set of channels. This means that teams can act as more or less that same role that the LMS traditionally fills. In my courses over the past, since March of 2020, I have no longer had my students use Colab at all. And that's not because I don't like Colab, but if I'm going to use Teams, we can just stay in Teams the whole time. We don't need to have this tool and this tool and this tool and this tool and this tool. We don't have to have 6 different homes for our course. I have taught a course in the past that uses Colab's discussion board. I've taught courses that use third-party tools for promoting discussion. And some of those tools are quite nice, and some of them show their age more than others, right? Some of them feel like forums from the 90s, or maybe, I don't know, to me, that reminds me of the 90s. Students and faculty, if you think about how do you interact with other people on the internet outside of classes, we generally interact in a much more modern way. We communicate quickly, efficiently with one another. Teams messaging allows you to do that. So you could even have a channel that's just dedicated to questions, or you can have a tab within one of your channels where you use the posts in that channel to have modern conversations. And when somebody posts to anything, Rick mentioned that this kind of linear idea, one of the things that happens here is whichever post has been commented on most recently shows up as the newest. And so even if somebody asked a question 3 days ago, if somebody adds an answer or adds a new question to it, it will pop up and you'll see it right away. You don't have to go hunting for it. So that is kind of a nice feel, and there are some things that make this especially useful. So I had my students work in groups that were named after fast food restaurants. You can see in this screenshot here. So there was one group that was named after, there's a hamburger joint called Five Guys. So this group was in the Five Guys private channel, and during our class session, we kind of were doing a little bit of like small group work. They were working in a video call in the Five Guys channel, but once they got stuck, they could come back to the general channel, tag their channel name and say, we need help in Five Guys. And then one thing that's really great about the chat in Microsoft Teams is you can emote on messages, you can reply to messages with text or with any file, and however you want to reply. So the way that I ran my class is I had my TAs who were ready to help. But once they see somebody asking for help and they're ready to go help them, kind of once somebody gets to the front of the line, they will put the little thumbs up emote. And then that means that the students now know they have a signal that somebody has seen their request and is on the way. So somebody comes in, helps, and then you'll notice pretty much at the same time, this group also let us know that not only do they need help, but they're letting us know what kind of help they need. They're ready for us to check their milestone, in this case on a project for a course. So this idea of letting people emote on posts will come back again when we talk about video meetings. You can share and collaborate on documents. That files tab that exists within a channel, especially if you have small group work, any document that you create in your channel, everyone can live edit at the same time. So I have 6 students using a Word doc, just like a Google Doc, because it's an interactive Word doc. It's a Word doc that allows collaboration across any number of users who are in the channel. I've also met with faculty in my department as we've been, with different committee work. We've live edited a document all at the same time. Can you do this with Google Docs already? Yes. But now, if you use Teams, you don't have to jump somewhere else to do something that you're already in Teams, maybe meeting together. You're already in Teams, keeping that channel. So this is a really nice way to create and maintain a persistent space for your students to do everything they do in the class. I want to just share very briefly, I know our time is short. I want to share very briefly what happened to me in March of 2020, right? We came back, well, didn't come back, but we resumed classes after spring break in an online format. The course that I was teaching at the time had about 6 different lab sessions, maybe 5 different lab sessions, each with 95 students, and they're in groups of 4. So with Zoom's breakout rooms, I needed to have, I don't know, about 20 to 25 breakout rooms. And you can pre-populate those breakout rooms and say this email address, the user with this email address goes to this room and so forth for all 90-something people. But unless students log on in a very particular way to Zoom, those room assignments don't actually happen. I spent 25 minutes in the first lab just assigning people to labs. Maybe some of you have had this experience. If you want people to be in the same groups in a persistent way, Teams calls are the best solution I have found. If you're going to do small group work with any regularity, and especially if you're going to be doing it online, Teams is, I have not found a better solution. Chat is more functional because people can emote on each other's messages. Have you ever seen, maybe, and this is rhetorical, you can answer if you wish, but have you ever seen in a Zoom chat, somebody asks a question and you think, I have that question too, or I want to know the answer to that question. And your only option is just to type it out, right? Oh, I agree with Rick's question, or just to copy and paste the same question and hope that the powers that be will see it. Well, when I ask a question in my lectures, if I'm online, one person asks a question, and then I just get thumbs ups and hearts on that message, and I know lots of people have this question. I should stop now and start addressing that question. Otherwise, I might not be able to do that. I can also ask questions to start class and say, maybe how was your weekend, and ask them to respond only by emoting on the message. We see some people had a great weekend, some people less so, right? I mean, you can interact in the way that we use the internet these days and the way that our students do. You also, again, I'm not trying to like dunk on Zoom or anything like that, but you can't, like Zoom chat is just not great, right? If you want to post a file, you can't do it. If you want to post like something that's animated, good luck. I mean, you just can't do it. And I'm not saying Zoom is bad. I'm saying Zoom was not built for this type of interaction. Teams clearly was, and it pays off a lot. So I just want to kind of mention that, especially if you're doing small group work, that's what drove me to Teams in the first place, was being able to have these small online meetings and have a space that persists. Have you ever had a group of students, they're working together, and then time runs out? Well, they can make their own Zoom meeting, but somebody has to make it, and then they copy and paste the link to everybody and say, you hope everybody clicks the right thing. They just have their space for the whole term, 24/7. They typically will meet during class time, but they can also just go there any other time that they want. So I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about online meetings, and that's because for me, this was the biggest initial draw. Lots of other things have kept me involved in Teams, but this is what brought me here. Okay, if you have group work, how do you manage this? So you can create private channels for each of your lab groups, and it takes a little bit of time to set it up, but once you set it up once, then you're done for the term. And so lab group 1, I have to add the people and say, okay, here's who's in lab group 1, just with their email addresses. This is something that TAs are actually very good at doing. And then how do they find their group? It's easy. They just know they're in the lab group. And in particular, one thing that's really, really nice is that because these are private channels in Teams, I am added and my TAs are added to all of them. So we can see all of the lab groups. But what does each student see? only the private channels that they are a member of. So if you are in lab group 1, you don't have to worry about even remembering your lab group number. You just know, oh, that's my lab group, because I only see lab group 8 if I'm in lab group 8. I don't see the other lab groups, so I don't have to worry about accidentally going to the wrong place. This is very, very, very nice, especially in comparison to any other tool that I've used. Okay, communication. If you want to send an announcement or an email or both, you can do it. In the posts tab of any channel of Teams, you can post not only just a traditional text post, but you can also post an announcement. So here we see a screenshot that shows an announcement called Some Clarifications. While I've kind of blocked out a little bit of it, part of the announcement was, well, while the prompt originally said that the deadline would be November 24th, we're actually going to be accepting late submissions through Wednesday. So this is a little bit of an old announcement, but at the time, we posted this announcement for students to read. And generally speaking, if you set, I think you can like set the announcement as some sort of high priority, and students who don't read it will get an email that will say, there has been an announcement and you need to go check it. This is a really, really nice and convenient way to have announcements. And there's also a way in Teams, I don't want to go into all of the little details, but you can keep a list of pinned announcements so that students can pull up all of the pinned announcements. And that's a pretty nice and useful thing. So again, if you want to communicate with your students, Teams has an option for you to do that. Okay, so I've talked somewhat quickly about how Teams can be a replacement for an LMS. It can be a replacement or a supplement for the way that you hold your video meetings. It can be a replacement or a supplement for the way that your students work with each other. It can be a place where you house documents and that people can work together on documents. Teams can be a tool for any or all of these things. I do want to point out, though, what if you like your own tool for some of these things? Maybe you think, oh, Teams video meetings look great to me, but I actually like using Piazza for discussions. That's great. You just go to your general channel, add a tab, add a website, and put in the link to your Piazza site. And guess what? It's just a web browser right in there. So it is not any different than using Piazza in any other way. If you like your own tool for some things, being able to add tabs is meaningful, powerful, and there are some EdTech tools that I have used where I've mentioned to the person, the third party who makes this EdTech tool, hey, I've kind of embedded the website in Microsoft Teams, and they have been shocked at how easy and powerful it is. I'll also mention, is Teams absolutely perfect in every way? I don't think so. I mean, there's some things that after working with it for, more than 1,000 students for multiple semesters, would I change some things? Sure. But I'd also change things about any other tool I've ever used. And Teams has been for the most part, a very smooth and enjoyable experience. So I want to just mention, just for 15 seconds, what's the future of Teams at UVA? You get to help us decide that. We have a small group of faculty that are using Teams pretty actively that I'm aware of. Some people might just be using it on their own, but we're growing. And Rick mentioned, oh, there's these things called bots. If we have a large number of faculty who, in the future, and we'd like to add a bot, we might be able to do that. We might be able to even create our own bots that automate certain parts of what we do in Teams. So I certainly can't promise you, here's exactly what's going to happen in Teams in 2 years or 5 years, but I think that the future is very bright. How can you learn more? Just reach out to me or to Rick. We actually have a couple of faculty members and I have a small Teams working group where we ask each other questions, because we've just noticed that sometimes one of us has already figured something out and the rest of us don't know it yet. So if you want to see that working group, let me know and we're happy to add you. If you want to just see more of what I can give you a kind of a tour of some of my class teams. But I just really appreciate you guys taking the time to come and take a look at this presentation. I'm happy to answer questions, also show off, I mean, any of these things that you want to see within Teams. I know we're kind of running up against time, but are there any last questions before we kind of finish off for the day? And I guess I'll check the chat.
Yeah, looks like everybody's getting around. Well, I want to remind everybody that I did record this. So, and that recording, I think not only will CTE make it available, but I'll also put it in the, yeah, I'll also share it through that public team that I talked about. And Rich, if you wanted to grab it and put on your team too, let me know, and I can share that as well. I know that was a lot of information, and we don't have a lot of time for questions. Of course, I'm willing to stick around, but thanks everyone for coming here. And Rich, thank you so much for showing exactly how you could use it in a class situation. I think that's really helpful. Teams in the future does look bright here. I know that it's part of the conversation moving forward on a lot of projects, because everybody is starting to use it more and find and leverage Teams successfully. So thanks so much for everyone. Like I said, you can reach out to me, Rick Reifenstein, if you have questions. Of course, Rich is open to answer classroom specific stuff, instructional stuff. And thanks again for showing up, and we'll hope to see you soon. Thank you.